Hi, my name is Vicky and I run fashionserviceshongkong.com, and you can find out a bit more information about me there. But today we're going to talk about how to increase your online sales, and we're going to do that using something called conversion, and we're going to look at the way in which people make choices. So let's start with conversion and what it actually is. A shopper is someone who is looking through your website or retail store if you have one. A consumer is someone who purchases from that site or store. Now, your conversion rate is how many people, how many shoppers we can turn into consumers. That's your conversion rate. Now, what we'd like to do throughout this presentation is increase your conversion rate, and we're going to do that by looking at the way in which people make their choices. So throughout the presentation, we're going to look at a few different things. We're going to look at information and choice and how much of this we give our shoppers. We're then going to look at the process that shoppers go through something called pleasure and pain, and how we can increase pleasure and reduce pain. And this will then lead to conversion and a higher rate of conversion for you. So let's start with the brain. How do we make choices? What's the process that every shopper goes through? So we are not actually rational people. Some people make shopping lists whenever they go shopping, but actually we make decisions based on our emotions and the process in which our brain goes through when we're looking at information, absorbing it, and making a choice. So here's our brain. This is the amygdala, and it controls our emotions. We also have the prefrontal cortex and the frontal cortex. This controls our planning and our judgment. And then we have the nucleus accumbens and the ventral tegmental, and this controls reward. Now, reward is the emotion that we have after we've bought something. This is the feeling where we can't wait to get home and try it on or get it out the box and use it. And we want to try and increase that feeling for people once they've bought our products. But in order to get to that point, we have to look at something called pleasure and pain. Now, this is the point when you're shopping, these are the areas in our brain that's lit up and starts to work throughout a process. Now, what we really want to do is we want to increase the pleasure part of the shopper's experience and reduce the pain part of the shopper's experience. And we're going to have a little look at how we can do that. So, pleasure and pain is influenced by two different areas. We have the information and choice that a shopper processes, and we also have emotions and preferences, which is what makes every person unique. These are our likes and dislikes, for example. Now, unfortunately, what we can't do is control people's emotions and preferences. These are very unique to every single person who might be coming to look at your products. But what we can do is give them a certain amount of information and choice and present it in a certain way, which will guide them through a process of increasing pleasure and decreasing pain. So let's start with the process of how people make choices. And to do that, we're going to go into a little bit of history about people and the choices that we've always had. So 12,000 years ago, man created agriculture, farming, crops, things like that. This led to something called market towns, and we still have market towns today. Market towns are basically cities or towns where the general activity for that town would happen. It was a place where traditionally you would have a market, people buying and selling goods. If you had products to sell, you would have a stall here in the general market. Today we have shops and retail units. But the theory is still the same. The idea is still the same. Now, in 1840, we came to the Second Industrial Revolution. This allowed a greater adoption of machinery. It allowed products to be made cheaper and quicker. It gave people more choice. And this was quite significant because up until this point, generally people had bought things based on their physical need. There was no real buying for luxury or buying for just want, because people couldn't afford it. The second industrial revolution allowed the cheaper manufacture of products, which allowed slightly more choice on buying for luxury, for buying for pleasure. In 1990, the internet then becomes commercialized and widespread. Now, this was not the point where people had the internet within their homes. This was where larger companies, larger businesses started to use the internet for monetization. They actually started to use it for making money. Now, around the same time, I remember a time where there wasn't the internet, and this is how people actually made choices. And we want to look at this little area of history because it was right before people got the internet in their homes. Now, if you were looking for information and research, for example, if you were at school and you needed to do a project, you would have to go to a library. Nowadays we can find the information online, but before the internet, the library was the only place in which we could find information. And you had to physically get up out of your seat, wherever you were, and travel to these buildings which contained all this information. Now, the interesting thing about this time was the books and the quality of the information that were within libraries. People trusted the information and trusted the books that were held within the library. Now, this was mainly because it was very difficult to get a book published, and the only people that would do it, because it was very costly and expensive and time consuming and would take roughly around 3 to 5 years, were people who were proper authors. They were researchers, or they were in a specific field where they had a lot of relevant, vital information to give other people. So when you went into a library, there was no question about whether they could trust the information, whether the information was accurate, whether it was real. People just assumed that everything contained in the library was accurate information. Unlike today on the internet, where pretty much everyone or anyone can publish an ebook. Now, in the same way, the choice for our shopping needs or wants was our local high street. Again, in the same way with the library, you had to physically get up out of your seat and travel to wherever your local high street was, or your CBD. Now, your choice in terms of the products that you could buy was what was in front of you. There was no internet. You couldn't just go and check what someone else had or compare prices or anything like that. You literally had the option of what was in front of you. And your local high street was not just in one area. You would have things like fruit and vegetable shops. You would have pharmacies. You would have clothing stores. You would have all these different areas of shops contained in your local high street. And depending on where you lived and how big your market town was, for example, your local high street might only have 10 shops. So your choice, your range of choice was very, very limited. In the same way, if you wanted something very special, for example, you might have to travel even further. Again, it depended on where you lived. You might have to travel to a larger city where you had a larger range of shops. Now, this only gave you more choice because there was more shops available to you. But in the same way, your choice was what you physically had in front of you. You still had to get up and travel, go to each shop, look through all of the products yourself, and make a decision based on what you needed. So let's go back to our little timeline. So everything in that brief little history up to this point had been exactly the same. Our choice and what was available to us was what was in front of our own eyes. We literally had what was in front of us. There was no other choice available. And then in 1995, along comes the internet in our homes. The internet, you have to remember, wasn't like it is today. It wasn't as big, it didn't have as much information on it, and e-commerce didn't really exist. So the interesting thing, and the reason that I'm telling you all of this history about physical shopping and the way in which people make choice, is because that really affects how people look at the websites that you have and the internet today. This entire period of time, from the time of agriculture and developing market towns to today, our brains have stayed exactly the same. They've developed into a certain process over all of these years, these 12,000 years. But the choice that we have now is completely different. So let's have a look at now and move on to the internet. Well, choice and information, as we all know, if you've ever looked on Google or searched for something, is literally everywhere. The problem for people is that our brains have stayed exactly the same, but our choices have gone so large, so quickly, that it's actually more than our brain can process. So what are our choices? Well, we have two types of choices. We have our choice of competition, which is great if you're a consumer. It means that you have a lot of different brands available to you, a lot of different products, but it also means that you can compare prices, you can look for the best deals, and you can get lots and lots of information. In terms of products, however, our choice of products, because of the way that our brains have developed over the years, people would generally believe that more choice is usually a good thing. Actually, it isn't. Our brains can't cope with the amount of choice that is available to them. So we have to look at a way, if you have many, many different products, we have to look at a way in which we can present those products to not overwhelm the customers that come to our shops. So we're going to do a little example here, a little test. And here you can see we have some jam jars. And I want you to imagine that you're standing in a supermarket with me, we're buying some jam, and we're looking at the shelf which has all of the jam. And over the next couple of slides, I'm going to ask you to pick a jam jar. Now, just to give you some more information, they're the same jam, same brand, they have the same packaging, everything is the same about the jam, just the different flavors, the different colors. So here are 3 jams. I want you to pick a jam. Now I paused there for a few seconds, mainly because that was the time that most people would take to look at the jams and pick a jam when they have a few options available. I want to do the process again. So again, pick a jam. Okay, now we've got 5 jams, so it would have taken slightly longer than when you did the 3 jams. But I want you to do this little game once more for me. Pick a jam. Now I'm not going to pause for as long as it would usually take to go through 21 jams, but actually it's not as long as you would think. When our brains are overwhelmed with so much choice, with so many options, we change the process in which we choose. On the first 2 slides, you had 3 jars to choose from and 5 jars to choose from. It probably would have only taken you a few seconds to pick those jam jars. What you did though, your brain looked at each individual jar, considered the information that was available to you, and in this case it was just the colour, just the flavour, and would look at every single product individually. For this particular slide, you would have had to scan. Your brain switches from looking at every single piece of information and looking at every option to scanning the rows very, very quickly and picking something that just pops out at you. Now, if you're a shopper, you might miss products that might be a better fit for what you need. If you're someone trying to sell a product, this can mean that your shoppers are going to miss a lot of products that you might provide. So it's really important to consider the way in which we also present our choices. And remember that too much option is not always a better thing than less. So let's move on to the brain cycle and how we actually process information and look at the choices that we have. When we look at the internet, we're always seeking information. It's the reason why search engines exist. When you type something into a search engine, you're always looking for something. Whatever that thing might be, could be an opening time for a restaurant or shop, it could be a map, or it could literally just be information on a retailer or looking through products on the internet. But we're always seeking information, and our brain goes through a particular cycle. It searches for information and then looks at the choice available to it. It then compares its choices and then has an emotional response. Remember, we were looking at the brains earlier and the pleasure and the pain aspect. Well, these are the emotions that our brain goes through. Now, when the pleasure outweighs the amount of pain in our brains, we then purchase, we then buy. If our pain part of our brain is higher than the pleasure part of our brain, the process just keeps going round and round. It keeps cycling around until that pleasure element in our brain is higher than the pain part. Now this then leads to conversion. We're moving the shopper from looking for the information to making one choice, hopefully our choice, and that makes them a consumer. So let's look at how we can convert. Firstly, what do people actually think when they're looking at a website? Well, there's a lot of things that go through our brains automatically. We don't really think about them consciously. But in terms of the information, we keep asking ourselves, is it genuine? Is it real? Is it what I think it is? And can I trust the site itself? And then on the other side, we have choice. There's too much choice, which can overwhelm us. It means that we can't decide. But they always think, what if I missed a better option? We have so much choice now on the internet that maybe we could have missed a brand, missed an offer, missed a product that was better for us than the one that we're looking at. Now, what does this all mean? Well, in terms of our brain, what we have to do is increase a certain number of elements in terms of pleasure and decrease a number of elements in terms of pain. Now, how we can do this, in terms of the pleasure, we're looking at the left-hand side of the slide. We want to increase trust. We want to make sure that they have enough choice, that people can find what they want and find it easily, that we're giving them a good service and good value. And then on the other side, we want to decrease distrust. We want to decrease too much choice, or we want to present our items in a way that we're giving the information to them easily. We want to make sure that they're not using too much effort to find our products, to find our services. We want to make sure that we're not giving them bad service and not giving them bad value. And as long as we're doing all of these things, the conversion rate on our products and for our businesses will always increase. Now, just quickly, a little tip that I'll put in here, which is quite important to note. If you're increasing those good parts, it doesn't mean that you're decreasing the bad automatically. And I'm going to give you a little example. Now let's imagine that our businesses have grown and we now have some retail stores. Now we have 4 people in our stores that give really good customer service, and we have 4 people in our store that don't. They give bad customer service. And we know this. And what we want to do is we want to try and increase the pleasure to our customers. So what we do is we take on another person that gives really good customer service. We've interviewed them, we know that they're great at customer service. Now before we had 4 people, now we have 5. We've increased the good part of our customer service. But let's have a look at the bad service for a moment. We haven't done anything to decrease the bad service. So all of the things that we do to try and increase that pleasure element in our brains for our customers, we have to also make a conscious effort to decrease the bad parts as well. So let's go on to your actual website and what does all of this information mean for you and how we can improve things. Well, let's go back quickly just to our initial slide. What we're looking at is the information and choice. People do look for information and they want enough choice. We want to increase pleasure and make sure we decrease the pain sensors in their brain of making that choice, and then we want to convert them from a shopper to a consumer. So this is how your website should really look if we go back to our little weighing scales. We want to increase pleasure and make sure we have lots and lots of information for our customers, because remember, that's why they use the internet. We want to make sure that we have enough choice and that our choices are presented in such a way that is good for our consumer, and we want to make sure that we decrease pain. So let's go on to the actual steps for conversion, what we can actually do on our websites to increase our conversion rates. Now let's start with the emotional part of our site, the pleasure and the pain part. In terms of pleasure, there are a few things that you can do to physically increase those elements in the brain that make a customer feel great and trust you. Now, we want to promote the best items. We want to make sure that they're looking at your best products the minute that they come to your website. We also want to allow them to take ownership of the products. And in terms of pain, we want to reduce friction, reduce pain by improving our customer service, but we also want to do little things for them like loyalty cards or bonuses. We want to make sure that we can know our customer really well if possible, and we want to make sure that we reduce their buying friction with credit cards and different payment options. So let's look at all of these things individually and how we can implement them on your site. So, promoting the best items. If you think back to our jam jars, if you remember, we went through our little process. We had 3 jam jars, 5 jam jars, and then 21. Well, our home page is our shop window, if you like. It's our shelf. We don't want to overwhelm people with too much choice that they're just scanning our products. We want to give them enough that they feel like they have lots of choice, but it doesn't overwhelm them. Now, through various bits of research and testing, it's generally considered that about 5 products really well laid out and really shown to its full potential is the best number. So if we can restrict our items on our homepage to around 5 of our best products, this will help entice people into our shop, into our website. Now, taking ownership is something that you may not have come across as a term yet, but it's something that you will understand. Now, if you've ever gone into a physical shop and gone into the changing room, you've gone around the shop, picked up your items, and taken the products into the changing room to try it on. The taking ownership is where we've tried those products on and we finally found something that looks amazing, feels great, might be the fabric, might be the cut, the color, whatever it is that makes that person feel amazing in that garment. That's when they then take ownership of the garment. They're looking at themselves in the mirror, they've got the product on themselves, they're looking at it on them. It's very, very difficult for that person then to take that product off and give it back to the shop assistant and say, no, I don't want it. Once we have that emotional response to a product, you take ownership. It's now your product. You want it and you have to have it. We're going to look at how we can increase that a little bit later on in terms of the way in which we provide photos to our customers online. But the general feeling is that we need to encourage the taking ownership element to increase our pleasure responses in our brains for our customers. Now, in terms of pain, What we can do to decrease pain is give people reasons to like us, to trust us, to come back, to have a good emotional response with our brand and with our shop. Now, loyalty cards and bonuses are a great way to do this. It gives people a reason to actually come back and visit our site. Now, you can combine this with knowing your customer. If there are any ways that you can personalize the experience for your customer, make it more of an interactive experience where you understand your customer, where you know your customer better, this will increase the pleasure aspect in your customer's brain. Now, the reason I said we could combine this, and just a little idea, and I think it's a great idea for any business, when you have a shopping cart or you have a survey or anything like that where you're asking your customers for information, why don't you think about asking them when their birthday is? Your birthday is a very personal day. It's your one day of the year, which is specifically just for you. And along comes a little loyalty card or a little bonus from a shop that you visited. And that just makes you feel amazing. Firstly, you're having a great day because it's your birthday. You're getting a nice additional little present, and you feel like someone has made an effort. A person that you don't know, that you don't know personally. They're not your friend, but they're giving you this present, and it increases the pleasure in their brain. It gives them a nice feeling, which will then decrease the pain of shopping with your company, and very much increases the pleasure. Now, the last point, the reducing friction, might seem really, really obvious in terms of credit cards, but I've seen a lot of websites who only have one specific payment option for their customers. Well, this doesn't really help their customers have choice in the way in which they pay. Some people have PayPal, some people don't. There are certain countries where people don't really use credit cards very much. They prefer to pay with a debit card or EPS. Some people, if you have a physical retail store, would prefer cash or check. Make sure that when you're building your website, when you're looking at your payment gateways, and you can ask your web developer about this if you're not sure, but make sure you have the most amount of options for people to pay. It just helps with reducing the friction. They don't have to sign up to a different account. They don't have to go through the process of finding information to something that they logged into a year ago and they can't remember their password, or whatever it is. The majority of people won't bother. They won't go through the hassle unless it's a product that they really, really desperately need. An additional point for the emotional responses of customers, there's something called the 5 people rule of customer service. And this is generally that when someone has a really good experience with a shop or a service, they generally don't tell other people. They might tell people about the product that they're really excited about, but they generally don't talk about the business or the brand that they got it from. However, if they have a bad experience, they will definitely tell at least 5 people about their bad experience. If you think about having a really bad day at work, stuff has just gone completely wrong, you will definitely go home and complain and moan to your partner or your family or your friends about what a bad day that you've had, and your friends will do the same thing to you. It is no different when you're shopping online or in a physical retail store. If you have a bad service, people will tell others. You have to make sure, out of every other option that I could even cover in this presentation, that your customer service is great, because this is what people will remember. Now, people are generally quite reasonable, very understanding. Things can always go wrong. That's not a problem. But if things do go wrong, be honest with your customer. There is nothing worse for a customer being promised something by your company and then not having it be delivered. If people know what's happening, if they know that there's a problem, they're informed, they have the information, quickly and honestly, they don't generally mind. It might be a little bit of an inconvenience, but believe me, it will do a lot less damage being honest with your customers than not telling them and giving them really bad customer service. Now I'm going to give you a little example. Back in January of 2014, we're now almost in May, it's the end of April, I found a website in China that sold these amazing bits of jewellery. They were quite fun, just costume jewellery, nothing expensive, nothing fancy, but there was a couple of pieces that I quite liked and I decided to buy them. I didn't know the company very well, but because the prices were very cheap, I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. Now, it's almost May and I still don't have the products. And I went through an entire process of emailing, calling, doing all these things to try and find out where my things were. They have never contacted me. They refused to reply to my emails. Even the shipping company told me that the order that I had, this tracking number, didn't exist. The point wasn't the price. You know, I can afford to have a little bit of, a few pounds go missing, that's fine, but the principle was that the customer service was awful. I had to search and search and search that website for the information just to email them, for any kind of phone number to call them, and nothing ever happened. I was told by 2 or 3 people just to go and try different things, it would just turn up, blah blah blah, all this stuff. 5 months later, I haven't received the goods at all. Now, in the same way, if we go back to our 5 people rule, I've given 2 presentations already on this topic of more than 20 people each. So I'm not including whoever's watching this. I've told over 50 people already. I haven't just told 5. I've told 50 people not to shop at wholesaledressnet.cn because the customer service is just so awful and you will never get your products. So please make sure, and what I'm trying to explain to you is customer service is probably one of the most important, if not the most important part of your business. Please put so much effort into this and make sure that it is good. It will make the biggest amount of difference to consumers. So let's move on to the information and choice part of your website. So let's have a look at things we can actually do on our websites for each of our products themselves. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have lots and lots of photos. Remember back at the market town scenario we were talking about, it's very different going into a physical shop and picking up a product. You can look inside, you can look outside, you can turn it around, you can try it on, you can look at every single detail. You don't have that option on the internet, so we have to give people that option. We have to make sure that we have so many pictures of each of our products that people feel like they are touching it, that they are looking at it from every different angle. We also want to show them the scale of the product. Make sure that you have at least one picture, not your main search picture, I might add, but at least one picture on a person. It gives people the scale of your product. They'll be able to see very quickly if a dress, for example, is knee length or mid-calf. It gives them an instant understanding visually of what the product will look like. Now, it also helps to increase ownership. If you remember, we were talking about increasing pleasure through taking ownership. We can do that not by giving them the option to try it on, but to see it on somebody else. They can then imagine themselves in it. They can look at that model, look at that person, and take ownership. With all the other pictures that are involved on your product page, it will give them that feeling of ownership if they really like the product. Details. more on photos and things like that, but make sure you give them lots and lots of details, whether that's in the pictures or in the description. Whatever it is, please make sure you give them lots of details. Every single customer will want to know something different. If you're looking at jewellery, for example, some people want to know what the metal consists of because they might be allergic to a particular metal. It might have a reaction on their skin, for example. Other people might want to know what the stones are, or how heavy the product is, the necklace, for example. So make sure you give them all the details. Now, in terms of photos, I would recommend that rather than putting up lots and lots of detailed pictures, because people do ask me about protecting copyright, there are fantastic little plugins now for your website where you can have one picture, and when you move your mouse over that picture, it will enlarge the picture, it will scroll over the different areas of that picture and give the customer some details. I would really recommend doing this because it does cut down the amount of copyright, and generally people are not able to save the blown up close-up pictures of your product. But you do still want to give your consumers all of the information. You do still want to give them the details. So I would still really recommend giving them all of that information. Now, we also have to remember that customers are not designers, and I might point out neither are buyers either. If you're doing wholesale or you're doing retail and you have different color options, different fabric options, whatever it is for your product, people need to see it visually. If you have a search function in your site, and I really recommend that you do, rather than putting one product in the main search and then allowing people to see the different color options when they go into that product, a better way to set up your search and your product is to show all of the separate colors, all of the separate fabrics, whatever your choices are for that product. Show each one separately in your search function. People will work out very, very quickly that it's the same product in different options. But if they're scanning products, if we go back to the jars again, if they're scanning products, something that's red, for example, might not jump out at them, it might not catch their eye, but something that's blue might be what they're looking for. And if you don't have that blue option in the main search, in the main results, they might discount that product altogether. And we don't want them to overlook our different options when we've gone to all the trouble of putting them together. So as I just said, we want to make sure that we have search. People are very, very impatient these days, and if a website doesn't load within, I think it's something like less than 5 seconds, people generally won't stick around to wait for it to appear. In the same way, people are impatient when they're looking for products. We use search engines, for example, to type in a piece of information. So we have an instant result, an instant return on what we're looking for. We don't go through every single website on the internet looking for the information. We just won't do it. There's too much to look through. So make sure you do have a good search function. Make sure you have different options to search for as well. If you're selling clothes, for example, make sure you can search by color, by size, by price. You might even want to go into so much detail that they can choose a neckline shape or a dress shape or something like that. But at least have some tags or some kind of criteria that people can search by. And also remember, as we said before, for all of your different options, make sure they appear in the return on a search. Whenever someone types in something to the search, they're not just getting your main product, they're getting all of the different color options, all of the different fabric options. Now the next one is, you don't sell your products, your friends do. Everybody in the world, I think, has bought something on Amazon, and if you haven't, go to their website and have a look at any product. At the bottom you'll find that there's always reviews, customer reviews. Now these are fantastic because people are wise these days to marketing. They're wise to brands telling them what they want them to know. But what they do rely on is other people. People are much more likely to buy on a friend's recommendation to a brand telling them that the product is great. So comments are always a fantastic way to encourage other buyers. So make sure that if someone buys something from you, you're encouraging them to leave a review. And in the same way, this will encourage other people to trust the product themselves. Now at the bottom there, I've written good and bad. Now I always think that bad reviews are always worth looking at as well. These are not necessarily a bad thing for you. If you have a bad comment from somebody, people can generally work out very, very quickly whether someone has had a genuine bad experience or whether the bad experience is more down to their own personality, let's say. But the bad comments, if you're getting 5 or 6 comments around one particular area, this is a fantastic resource for you as the developer or designer or seller. You will clearly know that there is a problem with your product, and it gives you the opportunity to remove the product, fix the problem, and then put the product back onto your site. You'll be able to use those bad comments as product reviews for yourself, for your own feedback. I would then also recommend that the people who have left bad comments, when you've put that product back on, the new and improved product, that you send them another product for free if you can, but you at least write and tell them that you've made improvements to their product, especially because it's been based on their comments. It gives them the understanding that you are listening to them, that they trust you, because you are actually responding to the things that they are telling you as a consumer. And it's a great way of giving them some really good customer service by telling them that you've taken the comments on board, acknowledged them, and actually acted on them. So the last part for the information and choice, are your policies clear? Do you remember we were talking about how we have to increase trust? Well, your policies, people do actually read them. They want to know about things like returns, for example. Will you take returns? They're more likely to take a chance if you'll accept returns. And what are your policies on returns? What about your credit card security? How secure is my information with you? And shipping, how long is it going to take? What courier service does it go with? All of these different things, you need to make sure that you're giving them as much information as possible so they feel like they understand you. It's very, very different from going into a shop on your local high street and knowing that it is physically in a location, and if you buy something you can take it back to that location. Online we don't have that trust, we don't have that understanding. So you have to give people the information up front. And then cross and upselling. Well, cross and upselling means that, again, like Amazon, if you've ever looked at one of their product pages, you'll see a section called people who looked at this product or bought this product also looked at this product. And generally they're a little line of products, little icons of other things that are relevant to the product they're looking at. They're similar to what they're looking at. That does actually increase conversion rates. It does also increase impulse buys. So you want to make sure that you're putting all of your cross-selling products on the same page as your main product that you're looking at. You might find as well that if people are looking at a product, they might find a better product for them by having these additional options. Now the main thing about this is it must be relevant. Don't give them options that have nothing to do with the product itself. Always give them something that links to the product that they're looking at, whether it's color or shape, whatever it is. Always give them relevant information. So now tips for your website. In terms of the information and choice, there are things that we can talk about in terms of the website itself and our brand. Keep your layout clean. Make sure that customers are not having to work to find things. Like we were talking about the search, in the same way, the layout and the navigation needs to be clear. Don't overwhelm them with lots of different things on their homepage or on the product pages. Anything flashing or attracting their attention with bright colors, things like that, will distract them from looking at the information you are trying to give them. So make sure everything is easy to find, very clear, and well presented. Now, as we said before, you do sell your brand, but your customer actually wants to buy into you. Your brand is why people will generally find you, find your website, for example. But the reason they buy is not because of your brand necessarily. It's generally because of you as a person, the information that you provide. If you're writing a blog, for example, and you're giving them little tips, little bits of information about yourself, it's a trust building thing. You can buy from another person far more happily than you will take a chance online. And we have to encourage that trust building on our websites. We have to make sure that our customers understand that we are a person behind our products. We are an actual real person who's not about to con them, not about to try and just take their money and run away, but we're an actual real person with a real story. And in the same way, your about page, if you have a great story, a reason why your brand exists, a reason why you're doing what you're doing, make sure customers know that. Make sure they know who they're actually dealing with. They're far more comfortable staying with one person than they are buying from a random brand somewhere who they can't contact. If you feel that you can, some people don't like having photos of themselves, but if you feel like you can put a photo on your about page or somewhere on your website so that people understand who you are, who they can see you visually, this has been known to increase conversions and trust by up to 70%. So if people can feel like they actually trust you, that they can see who you are, I would encourage you to place a photo on there as well if you feel comfortable doing that. Is your contact page ready? If you don't do anything else when you finish watching this video, please do this. Go to your contact page and make sure you list every single way that people can contact you, and also have lots of different options available for them to contact you, and make the contact page really easy to find. If we go back to my little story about Wholesale Dressnet, it took me a couple of hours to actually find their contact information, and then I had to go through a process of days and days and days of sending emails, Skype messages. I tried every single way to contact them that they had available. In the same way, if you are allowing people to contact you through lots of different methods, make sure you do respond, and fairly quickly. There's nothing worse than trying to contact someone and then them never getting back to you, or getting back to you in 2 weeks' time. Always make sure that if you're offering a way of contacting you, that you are going to respond. So just as a quick summary, we already know that what we want to do is increase the information, because that's how people search the internet. We want to give people choice, but not too much. And then we want to look at increasing pleasure and decreasing pain in the brain process. And you've seen this slide before, but just as a quick summary, we want to increase trust, we want to give them enough choice, we want to make sure they can find what they want easily, with good service, good value. And we also, if you remember, we want to decrease distrust, too much choice, too much effort, bad service, and bad value. So thanks for watching the video today. I hope by implementing some of these tips that you'll be able to increase your conversion. It already has proven results for so many other companies that I'm hoping it can do the same for you. If you'd like more specific information or to tailor any of this to your specific company, feel free to contact me. My name is Vicky at www.fashionserviceshongkong.com.